Hello and welcome to today's PAVE Coffee Chat, Sketch Your Own Path. Please join me in welcoming our host for today's chat, Callison RTKL's Principal of Global Retail Practice Area and PAVE's immediate past president, Cindi Kato. And let's all give a warm welcome to today's guest, David Vilkama. David Vilkama has produced award-winning work in a multitude of different disciplines ranging from advertising to interior design. David holds both Master of Architecture and Bachelor of Science in Architecture degrees from the University of Minnesota. His design career began at Callison RTKL, where he helped deliver retail concepts and new store designs for West Elm, Pottery Barn, Cole Haan, AT&T, Nokia, Best Buy, and many other leading brands. Following his Callison RTKL experience, David moved on to the global design consultancy Fitch Worldwide. As a design director at Fitch, he led the creation of many game-changing retail concepts for brands such as Target, Buffalo Wild Wings, and Microsoft. Moving client-side, David recently held the Senior Director of Global Design and Innovation role at McDonald's Corporation. His myriad of responsibilities included sparking and developing highly innovative retail strategies and restaurant designs that were deployed in over 100 countries. David also played a critical role in the creation of new brands, brand extensions, and menu concepts to generate additional revenue streams. Currently, David acts as Global Vice President of Design and Construction at Chipotle Mexican Grill. David's teams, while building new restaurants to support a massive growth phase, are also filling up an innovation pipeline with exciting new design concepts, formats, and footprints. Finally, David also serves as a core member of the GLEAM network. GLEAM, the Global Leadership Enhancement and Mentorship, is a nonprofit group that provides mentorship and leadership development to the underserved community in the restaurant and food service industry. At the conclusion of today's chat, we'll be hosting a brief Q&A. Please send in your questions using the Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen. Now I'll turn it over to you, Cindi and David.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm really excited today to have my friend and industry leader, David Vilkama, here from Chipotle. We hope you're going to enjoy this lively conversation, and we'll just start getting right into it. David, I know you have your master's and your bachelor's in architecture. How would you say that your educational journey, what you thought it was going to be, differed from what you actually learned?
Oh, great question, Cindi. If I go back really early days and look at my design education, it actually started probably before grade school. My grandmother actually taught me how to watercolor paint. And she had assured me that someday I would be an artist and probably a famous artist. I learned early on that that wasn't actually going to happen. And so my backup plan, since I knew I wasn't going to be an artist, was, well, maybe I should get into architecture, and at least I could design those museums that might hold other famous artists' work. So it really started there with that inspiration very early on to get into art. And that led into my passion of architecture.
And then, you know, you have branched off from your resume into many different areas: hospitality, commercial, workplace. How did you maneuver your way through those different facets of design?
Yeah, I mean, obviously getting into architecture, there's obviously many types and categories of architecture, but, you know, very early on learned that tackling an architectural problem is really just about digging into a bunch of variables and coming out with a design solution. And yeah, spent the early part of my career doing architecture and retail design, but then was very fortunate to get a chance to work on a couple food and beverage concepts, and was involved in a holistic reinvention of a pretty well-known sports bar. And that kind of married my love of architecture, design, and business. And as everybody knows, I'm a big foodie. And from that point on, it was all food and beverage for me.
So through all of your different work scenarios and schooling, and your life in general, when did you have a great aha moment? And how did that influence you in moving forward in your career?
Yeah, actually, I had two very distinct aha moments. The first one I already articulated when I realized I wasn't going to be an artist and I'd have to do something else with my career. I still remember that day. The second aha moment was actually pretty early on in my retail design career, and it came about in terms of a client email. So our team was working on a new retail concept, and we got an email back from the client that said, "Hey, congratulations on the new format. We're really excited to, roll this out across the country." The first pilot saw a really big comp sales lift. And, that early on in my career, I was just looking to see what design awards we could win or what design publication we could maybe sneak my name into the back of the article. But that was the first time I had seen a client come back and say, actually, that design that you guys not only, put through CAD and got permitted and got built, not only was it a beautiful design and was on brand, but it actually led to that brand increasing their business. That was kind of the big aha moment, that actually design can drive brands. Design is great for business. And from that moment on, it was off to the races.
I mean, I think that's a great point in terms of, when you are just embarking on a design career, is that you don't really look at the other facets, which the big one is the ROI. And so attributing design and business together, I mean, I think, learning that early on was important. Okay, I mean, these days, there's a lot of out of the box thinking going on. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean, inspiration obviously comes from a lot of different places. My advice to everybody is to travel as much as you can. The more things you're going to see, the more people you meet, the more cultures you experience, the better you're going to be as a designer. So my advice, travel, travel, travel. I've been very fortunate and blessed to have been to 50 plus countries in my short life. And I'm looking to go to more as soon as all these borders open. But beyond that, look to be inspired outside of your category. It's even tempting for me as I look for inspiration on what's next, say even at Chipotle, just to look in the restaurant category or food and beverage category. Is I force myself and I challenge my team to look for inspiration outside of the category. Sometimes the best new little boutique hotel might have the best learnings or best inspiration for us as we look at restaurant design. It might be a food truck. It might be actually some amazing new residential design that's coming out. And so it's really about looking outside of your actual category that you're working in to really get inspiration, because that's kind of breakthrough type of inspiration that will take your work to a whole new level versus just looking within your category for kind of what your neighbors or competitors are doing.
So you are a great mentor. What would you say are your top mentoring skills, what you like to share, as well as your mentoring style?
I think the jury's probably still out if I'm a great mentor. I can definitely say I have a lot of fun mentoring folks. It's almost more exciting than just doing design alone. But as I look at my mentoring style specifically, to answer your question, it's really about cheerleading. The folks that I get to meet, the folks that I get to work with, the folks that I get to support are so amazing when it comes to design. It's just a matter of kind of sparking them to think bigger than maybe they are thinking. And really just letting them shine, and putting that runway out for them, and really just igniting their passions and helping them chase whatever goals they think they have, because they can always reach further. So that's really, at the end of the day, I love cheerleading and watching other people succeed as a mentor.
So you have an amazing talent of being able to sketch, and I think it's really interesting how you use your sketching abilities. Can you share that with everyone?
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's a lot of things that sketching does for me personally. One of them, I mean, you guys can see me, I'm actually sketching right now. It's one of those things that I do to keep my anxiety at bay. I love sketching. It just helps me calm down, puts me in a very good state of mind. But I also use sketching not just to communicate, here's a final concept or a final design, or here's the final rendering, but I really, really use sketching to communicate, whether that's with a client, mean, my kids even get frustrated when I'm sketching stuff in terms of what their weekly jobs are. But really, it's sketching to communicate, and clients love that. If you can sketch in front of them, it helps sometimes, talk through a really complicated problem, or, come up with an interesting solution. So it's sketching to communicate. And at the end of the day, I don't believe sketching is just drawing. I know you guys are seeing some of my sketches here on the screen. Everybody, regardless of what design discipline you're in, you might actually do sketching with a pen, as I have here. But photographers, you guys might be doing your own version of sketching and doing mood boards with photography, or kind of quick snapshots. And there's different kinds of mood boards people are putting together. I've seen a resurgence in people kind of doing paper models, or little cardboard models, if they're an architecture firm. That's all sketching. And really, you are sketching to communicate, whether it's with yourself to filter through some ideas you have, or working with your team or your leadership, or working with a client. Sketching is all about communicating in a different fashion than just kind of the typical verbal communication.
That's great. Through the years, and even right now, I know people are struggling with work-life balance, and work from home. Tell us how you look at work-life balance, because you have an active family and you travel a lot, and you're busy. But how does work-life balance look to you?
Work-life balance, it's obviously, I call it the never-ending struggle. I do think it's very important. Burnout is a real issue in our industry, especially over the last couple of years, for sure. But in particular to me, I look at it as, I love to work hard. At the same token, I have to find ways to recharge. So my mantra is kind of a cliche, but work hard, play hard. And when I'm off on a holiday or on a weekend, I try as much as possible to actually truly disconnect. I try not to send a lot of emails on the weekend if they're not important. And truly, when I'm not working, actually spending time being mindful that I'm with my family or my kids. That being said, another piece of it is get everybody into the mix. My kids have traveled to quite a few countries alongside me. They've been to quite a few job punches. They've been in the office. I think, early days, Cindi, you probably remember my little toddlers hiding under my desk back at the old Calson days. So it's really getting them into the loop, sharing them what the passions are. It's interesting, I was telling Cindi yesterday, getting ready for this chat, my kids had all kinds of opinions on this background that I set up for the chat today. Dad, it's the wrong piece of artwork, and you got to be in the different room, etc. And so it's really just getting them involved in what I do for a career, and that kind of helps with the work-life balance. But truly, beyond bringing them along to some job sites and interviews and design critiques, etc., you have to find the time to recharge. So as much as I'm traveling, as much as I'm busy, I also probably take more vacation than most people would ever believe. And I like to take a lot of it in order to be effective when I'm actually at work.
That's great, because I think, work-life balance also changes even on a daily basis, right? But I think I found too that having your kids engaged in what you do and seeing that passion also helps them in, their future career choices. So, what are some key advice that you would give to students just starting out, and, some advice that could carry them through their career?
Okay, so this will be tough to narrow it down to a couple things, but just thinking through it real quickly here in my mind, I think the first one is, regardless of where you are in the educational process, school-wise, I don't actually think the educational process ever ends. I'm still learning every day. You really truly need to write down what your goals are. For me, everything that I've actually written down, somehow and whether that's writing it on paper, or now I have it on my iPhone. And you wake up in the morning and it says, David, in 2025, you're going to be doing X. And I see it every morning. And I've had that. I was sharing with Dash yesterday that, if you go back and look at my old list of all the goals that I had, one of it was to go intern at a really big, architecture firm in Seattle. And it happened. And there's many different things in terms of goals. It should be obviously more than just what title or how many millions of dollars you want to make. There's many different goals you can have on that list. But at least for me, I don't know if it'll work for others, but until I actually write it down and I see it every day, does it actually somehow manifest itself? And so I continue to put some pretty audacious goals down in my phone. My kids and family will laugh at me, but so far we've been batting pretty well average-wise on those goals. So that's my advice, because if you see it, you start to think about it, you start to dream about it, you start to map a plan on how you're going to get there, you start putting goals toward it, and before you realize it, you will be wherever you want to be based on what those goals are. So that would be the first big one.
Yeah, I think the other thing that, you're really good at too is giving back. And do you want to talk a bit about Glean as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think giving back is critical. That's why I'm excited to chat with everybody on the call today. I mean, there's many ways to give back, and there's no perfect time to give back. Person shouldn't have to wait till they're retired or later on in their career. I know there's a lot of students that are listening in right now. You can give back right now, even while you're in school. And I still have a decent chunk of my career in front of me. And I can tell you one of the biggest things on my list, on my goal list that we just talked about, is figuring out ways to give back to the people who have, found me fabulous jobs, have written beautiful reference letters, and in many ways have found me all these exciting roles that I've been lucky enough to land. And I'm going to spend the back half of my career trying to figure out how to pay that forward to folks. And, I want to do it now. I'm not going to wait till I'm retired. And so that's kind of my challenge to everybody: figure out a way to give back. It could be looking at portfolios. It could be cheerleading someone before an interview or coaching them through a big interview. It could be forums like this. I mean, PAVE's amazing. Gleam is a newer network that I was fortunate enough to get invited to. As we look at the food service industry, just, supporting underrepresented or underserved folks that, are trying to figure out, well, how do I get into leadership, or how do I get a manager role or a director role? So it's a mentorship and leadership program. There's a lot of good programs that are, we've been going through on that front, but really there's many different creative ways to give back. And, as I mentioned, things, being checked off of that goal list, it's pretty surprising. The more a person gives back, how many of those things actually then start to happen. So I truly believe giving back will equal, great things in your own career.
I mean, I think too, something that, we talked about was being that connector, right? Whether that's giving back or, introducing people to others, networking from that standpoint. And, I think you're good at that from that standpoint, and the reach out and, the engagement with the mentoring aspect of it too. So
yeah, no, I mean, the connecting piece is, I've learned from the best in the industry, talking to you there, Cindi. It's one of those things in terms of just kind of, connecting and meeting people, because truly, when all our design careers are over, I'm probably not going to remember the projects or the few awards or, all the accolades. It's going to be the people that I got to work with. And, that was my actually third piece of advice. And it's really kind of speaks to the theme of today's, chat, this idea of sketching your own path. And sketching your own path it's truly finding your own path. Again, regardless of what design discipline you're in, there's always kind of the way that it was always done. You got to put in 35 years before you can be the principal of whatever firm. I would challenge that if I were you. There are many, many different ways to get to your goals. There's many different ways you can pivot in your career, try different things, and, honestly, find your own path to whatever those goals are. And, you may be able to do it in a faster period of time, or actually it might be more fun to take longer to reach some of those goals. And it's going to come down to, as Cindi said, the people you meet, the people you know, but I also truly believe the people that you take care of and the people that you help as well. One key example of this is I remember there was I'll call it a client agency kind of debate going on over a project. And, I was looking for some coaching and advice on how to work through the situation and, how to communicate kind of what next steps might be for this tough business decision. And was fortunate enough to be able to go over to Cindi and say, hey, Cindi, what do I do in this situation? I'm kind of at a loss. And I still to this day remember her advice. And she said, David, you do you. And so that's my advice for everybody, whether you're giving back, chasing your goals, find your own path, do it in your own way. There's tons of architects, interior designers, illustrators, art directors, folks out there. The more you bring in terms of your kind of own style, your own personality, your own way of thinking, that's actually the very valuable piece. It's not like following what everyone else has done exactly. It's doing it in your own way for sure.
Yeah, and to challenge yourself to do that, and remind yourself. I think that's important. So you talked about pivoting, and everyone's talking about pivoting and innovation, especially as we've gone this past year. Can you share some things in regards to personally what you've done, as well as what's going on in Chipotle world?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, pivot is quite the theme of the last 2 years, probably to the point it's almost cliche, but there have been some massive pivots. Personally, for me, having been on the road for such a long time, I mean, if I look at 2019, traveling, I don't know, probably every week of the year, it was a change to say, wait, I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to be in this office and, it's working through that. Somehow with that pivot of being home a lot more and just not traveling, we actually as a team opened even more restaurants. So that was a big surprise. That was a big learning of how much impact we could actually have from, being behind a desk. Obviously it wasn't as easy as maybe I'm making it out to be. You get to the point where we're like, hey, Dad, I think it's time for you to go on a trip. We're kind of, why are you home so long? Get out of here and come back. We need a break from you. So that's kind of a personal pivot for me, just kind of dealing with not traveling and being able to kind of, go out and get inspired and go to job sites and meet all my team members. And then specifically on the Chipotle side, I know a handful of you guys that were on here. We as the Chipotle development team actually did a design conference about a year ago called The Pivot. And specifically in there, we talked about how we as a company, had to pivot during the pandemic. Just a little bit on that front, we were very fortunate to have a very well-developed app already. One of the top 5 apps in the food service industry before the pandemic hit. So when it hit, obviously we were able to very quickly pivot to customers using our mobile app, and then very easily on their own being able to go to the restaurant and pick up their order. And also at the same time, we were already, testing and piloting what, we called our, kind of the new fast casual drive-through, which we call the Chipotle. And, we had a few dozen already, built across the country. And, so coupling that mobile app with our new drive-through design, it's no surprise now that as we move forward, as we kind of share our guidance externally, I would say the majority of our restaurant openings will be these new Chipotle. So we were fortunate to be in a good spot when the pandemic hit, but at the same token, we are such a nimble company. It's pretty surprising for folks how nimble we are. We were able to very quickly pivot to our advantage and make it through the pandemic.
And kind of on that note, I mean, where do you find, within your company and within your team, it's very diverse from that standpoint in terms of, getting input and from within the company internally. Can you share a little bit about that, it's just not the design team that is putting everything together, but it's the input from others and the diversity of your team members that, help kind of push innovation forward?
Yeah, no, I love talking about diversity. And at Chipotle, our leadership has a very compelling stance on diversity. And so really, we have a strong culture. That's what's got us through the pandemic. That's how we were able to open restaurants sitting at home. That culture got us through everything. But that culture is really driven by, a handful of tenants. But the most important one, and I'll talk about it a little bit here, is this idea is we look for new employees, new staff, whether they're joining any function or even joining my function, is we're looking not for a culture fit, we're looking for a culture add. And in many ways, the more diverse my team gets actually the better we do business wise, the more we can deliver. So, as I'm looking to fill roles on my immediate team, the more diverse backgrounds, the more diverse in terms of the people we're interviewing, the more diverse experiences they have, et cetera, the better it is for us. And I'm very proud to say our team is very diverse in so many different ways. And even beyond that, it's just diversity in thinking. Sometimes, I'll be honest, some of our best architectural ideas came from the art director, or our art director might have actually had one of the best new menu concepts that's come out in a while.
Right.
And so it's that ability as designers to use design thinking to tackle any problem, look at anything, and come out with a design solution. And yes, you might have been formally trained as an architect, or formally trained as an interior designer, or formally trained as a graphic designer. Don't limit yourself to that. What I've learned is, okay, at the end of the day, an architect's probably going to go do the building design and stamp it and hire the crew that's going to go build it. But some of our best ideas have come from the folks you wouldn't expect. So beyond just diversity of people, diversity of backgrounds and experiences that we're drawing from, it's also just diversity in thinking and truly bringing a lot of people to the table. And for me, it's a badge of honor. I had some leadership recently, slowly starting to look at going back to the office. I bumped into someone in the hallway and they're like, David, I met your new employee and I don't know, what does he do? Does he work in menu or marketing? I'm so confused. To me, that's a badge of honor. I know exactly what that employee does and they're doing a fabulous job at it, but they have so much breadth in terms of what they're doing with their design thinking that people think they work in multiple departments. That's exciting as a designer. That you can't beat that. So that would be my short answer on diversity at Chipotle.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, I mean, this is a good chat. I'm looking forward to questions. As you know, Cindi, I would talk all day long, so I want to make sure there's time for some questions, and then I can continue to answer questions. But I think I would just sum it up. I really appreciate PAVE, Nikki, Cindi, you guys inviting me to chat. I love doing this, and so I'm looking forward to answering questions here and continuing the conversation.
I mean, I just want to thank you because, the enthusiasm, the energy, love it from that standpoint. And, providing that hope, for students as well, and engaging in the industry, but being able to think outside the box in, where their career might take them. So thank you.
Yeah. Happy to do that. It's one of those things, and then I'll hand it over to you, Cindi, for the questions. Whether you work at a small brand, a big corporation, et cetera, there's a little bit of kind of a thing out in the industry where you're a designer, we'll wait till you come at the end of the day and you decorate it or you build it. No, my personal opinion is designers should be involved upfront or upstream. A designer can work through a strategy for a corporation. A designer can be there writing the white paper that leads to some new concepts. And in many ways, it's not just a fantasy. It actually is truly now in the industry happening. So again, regardless of what discipline you're in, what you're trained to do and what you're being educated in right now from a design perspective, companies need that type of thinking. And just because you're a designer doesn't mean you can't solve an operations problem or a strategy problem or a marketing problem or a menu problem. I guarantee with your training, you can tackle those, and companies are begging for that support. And that's why I'm excited to see, I can't see everybody obviously, but as you guys get out in the industry, go out and do it. Don't limit yourself. Obviously at the end of the day, you're going to own design and design beautiful things. But you can also truly help those businesses. It's not a joke and not a fantasy. You truly can do that.
Thanks, David. We're going to open it up for questions, and Nikki is going to.
Yep, I'm here. All right. So the first question is, who was your biggest mentor and what was one lesson they taught you?
Oh, my biggest mentor, I'll just mention him by first name. His name's Brandon. The guy said, David, dream away. I thought I had big, aspirational, lofty, scary goals. I shared them with him and he said, those are far too small, David. And so I took that to heart. And so to this day, I'm always trying to figure out ways to give back to now my friend Brandon.
Nice. Okay, the next question is, when it comes to design education, what are your thoughts on breadth versus depth?
Ooh,
Um,
I kind of alluded to it, probably gave it away already. Breadth all day long. Obviously, at the end of the day, you're going to come out with a paper that says you're a certain type of designer. If you need to get registered or certified, or go through all the, whether it's architectural boards, etc. To get all those licenses. Of course, you're going to do that. You're going to be an expert or kind of an SME in one type of discipline. But as you get out into the business world, the idea of kind of design generalism or a design generalist, that's where it gets exciting. That doesn't mean you need to turn your back on what you were, studying in school or what your passion is. No, not at all. But breadth will win, in my opinion, any day over depth. And that doesn't mean if someone says, hey, I just want to be an art director and that's all I'm going to do. Great. I mean, you can have a fabulous career. But, from what I deal with on a day-to-day basis now, a lot of times, if I need an architect or an architecture firm or an architect, we can go hire one. But a lot of our business solutions don't require just an architect. It's an architect who has a menu background, or it's an interior designer who understands operations. And so in many ways, the more breadth you have in terms of design education, the more breadth you have in terms of just experiences out in the world, that translates to you kind of being able to wear a lot more hats in the business world. And those are the folks that, if I'm interviewing 6 interior designers and everyone went to great schools and had great mentors and great professors and had beautiful portfolios and has all the certifications and qualifications, how do I pick someone out of that bunch other than personality, diversity, etc.? I'm going to look for the folks that can wear the most amount of hats. Or even if they don't have experience in multiple buckets, say, David, I'd love to get into operations, or I really want, I got some ideas on marketing. Those are the folks that get the looks. Those are the folks that get the nods. And at the end of the day, the real cool thing is they get to work on all the cool stuff.
Mhm.
Sorry, I was muted. Are sustainable solutions truly ingrained in today's architecture decisions? What is the biggest challenge for brands and businesses to be sustainable? Is it budget?
Okay, sustainability, it's interesting. If you go back 15, 20 years ago, folks were looking at sustainability just to, get some credit for it, or, check it off the list, and, a whole bunch of greenwashing going on. In many ways, we all as designers, sustainability it needs to be common sense. In many ways, it's already baked into how we're educating you guys as students. It needs to be baked into our design process. It needs to be baked into whatever our output is, whether it's a sculpture or a store or a building, whatever that is. It's just, we need to do it. It's a critical thing. And we at Chipotle, one of our biggest brand pillars is this idea of cultivating a better world, and we truly believe that every day. And it's something we practice. And it's one of those things. I think the industry is changing from people bragging about, hey, look at me, look what we're doing from a sustainability perspective, to just doing it because it's the right thing to do for the world. And then the question is, well, how impactful can we be with it? I think we can be tremendously impactful. And we're at a point now where there's going to be a pivot, to Cindy's word there, where we need to look at it at a much bigger scale. I mean, reusable or renewable or recycled materials. Yes, all of that. There's a whole laundry list. That's all important. But we really need to look at, carbon offsets, carbon neutral buildings, some really kind of bigger themes, just even as a food and service industry, but also just as a design industry, some really big game-changing things to really start having an impact on the planet. The rest of it, I think, is just literally the green fees. If you're not doing that stuff, something's wrong.
Do you guys have an overarching, sustainability team within Chipotle that is kind of guiding and directing that as well?
Yeah, we have a very robust team. They actually just very recently put out a big sustainability report. We have some pretty big audacious goals, just in terms of carbon footprint, et cetera. So it's something truly in terms of kind of cultivating a better world that cuts across everything we do as a company, for sure.
That's great.
All right. How often do you consider a change of image or design in a successful restaurant such as Chipotle?
Okay, so I'm guessing you're asking, like, how often do we refresh the design? I think that comes down to a couple things. So one, you kind of look at customer sentiment. I mean, you got to look at what kind of customers are, what they're thinking about the space. You can do focus groups, you can do research to see, what customers are thinking and feeling about the space. So that it should be customer driven. It shouldn't just be David wanting to do something because he has ADD and wants a new concept next week. So that's the first piece. And then the second piece is, as I mentioned earlier on, is you should do a redesign if it's good for the business. So most folks you've probably seen in the news, we relaunched a new look and feel about 1.5 years ago. It's definitely a new look and feel. There's new materials. We kind of upgraded the palette, upgraded the furniture. I could talk for hours about that, but behind all of that, there was a business reason to do that. We looked at, there's all kinds of enhancements, say, to the kitchen that will drive growth. They will accommodate all these crazy digital sales that are, that we're handling now. If you've been in one of these new footprints recently, you'll see there's a ready to drink cooler right at the POS. So that's something you as a customer can now just grab that bottle of beverage yourself. So there's a lot of business reasons beyond just kind of, hey, let's update the look and feel and kind of the branded environment. There's a lot of business reasons that also, drive that kind of refresh or rebranding, or let's actually just put a whole new concept together for the brand. And then the third piece of it just really comes down to beyond just customer sentiment is how are guests or customers actually acting. So we anticipate that people will probably eat differently after the pandemic's over here, but also in many ways it might be just go back to the same. Actually, we actually think some people will go, a lot more people will come back to eat because they haven't been able to hang out with their friends for a long time. So it's really looking at customer behavior, kind of where trends are going, etc., regardless of what category in. So it's customer research, it's kind of business goals, whether you're driving sales or margins, etc. And then the third piece is just customer behavior, where trends are going, and in my case, just how people are eating, how people are socializing. Do they want to spend time in a restaurant, etc. So it's a whole host of factors, I would say, Nikki.
All right. And where do you think it is best for design students to find inspiration?
I've given it away a couple of times. Keep traveling, keep traveling. It's unbelievable what you can learn visiting other countries and meeting other people, because it really, truly makes you look at things differently. And it's amazing. I'll start there. The second thing is I'll challenge, it's all designers. It's very easy to do. We all look at each other, right? So we go to all these events and who's the next new rock star retail designer? And we all kind of look at each other and we emulate each other. And one brand comes out with a new concept, and lo and behold, another brand comes out with 8 similar ones right behind it. Or a brand launches a new menu item, and all of a sudden 10 other brands come out with a similar menu item. And so that's typical. Kind of everyone's kind of looking at themselves, who's in the who's in the swimming pool with you. But I would challenge all designers to look outside of that. There's many other areas you can find inspiration in art that aren't just in the design world. And then whatever you're bringing back is new. It's different. It's definitely outside of the box. And you'll have thinking, experience, ability to kind of filter through thoughts, ability to look at things that are different than anybody else that you're studying with or working with. So I would say look outside of design to find inspiration for design.
And back to the pivot. When is a good time to pivot, other than the pandemic or this ending of the pandemic? When is a good time to pivot, in your opinion?
I could answer it 2 ways, from a personal side or business side, but I'll try to answer it together collectively. It's one of those things, I think, ideally, and if it was a perfect world, you could forecast when to pivot and be ahead of it, and pivot right at the right time. And a lot of times that's just not possible, however. And if you pivot at the right time, you might have just been lucky. And so, because ideally it wouldn't just be a reactionary thing where you're in trouble or you're burned out and you got to frantically pivot at that point. You should still do it, but it's one of those things. I think to answer the question, I was actually thinking about this before I jumped on the call, thinking it might be a question, is if you're not having fun and you're not learning, whether that's you personally or you as a company, it is time to pivot, for sure.
That's a great answer.
It is. And the last question is kind of more of a personal question. As an architect, what new buildings do you find the most exciting in the last year or so?
Whew, wow, that's a tough question. For you fellow architects that might be on there, us architects, we're kind of history geeks, so we like all the we like a lot of the old buildings. At University of Minnesota, when I was a teaching assistant, my specialty was architectural history prior to 1750. So, but I won't get into that since you're asking about new projects. I mean, Jeannie Gang's had some really cool stuff pop up recently that I think is pretty fascinating architecture to look at. So yeah, that would be my answer.
All right, that is all the questions we have for today. Thank you both for doing today's coffee chat. It was wonderful and fun. Do you have any final words?
I'll let Cindi go first. I always have. Cindi, fire away.
It's funny because I love the reminder when we were practicing yesterday of what I said to David about you do you. And I was saying that to my daughter last night, and it's a good reminder for myself too, to do me, right? And so I think gleaning out of this, for me, this coffee chat with David, it's something that everyone should maintain and continue to do. And you can do you, but reinvent you as well, or pivot you.
Well said. My final comment to everybody that's on the chat here today is you picked the best profession on the planet. We designers, don't tell too many folks. We don't want to let the secret out. We have a ton of fun. We continue to learn every day. And 3, we truly impact the world and we impact people. So my challenge to you guys is go out there and be you, be yourself, but truly go out there with the mindset that you can change the world, because you actually honestly can change the world. And so I see a bunch of names here that are on the invite list. I hope to see you guys running charities, being CEOs, starting brands, etc. And someday if I'm still working, maybe I'll come work for you guys. So go out there, succeed, and have the time of your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined us today. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend ahead.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thank you all. Take care.